Postbank is promising grant beneficiaries that cash shortages at some KZN branches will be addressed by the end of today. This comes after SASSA recipients were left without money for days last month following a technical glitch. The public has been advised to also use retailers and ATMs instead. Let's continue with reaction to the story. Bring in Black Sash's KZN Regional Manager, Evashnee Naidu, who joins us via our video link this morning. And it's great to have you on the program, Evashnee. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Devastating that the situation was allowed to get here to begin with, given just how many people solely depend on these grants.
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to be so grateful though, is that there are no technical glitches for the October payment cycle. Everything across the country is running smoothly. The only challenge, and particularly KZN has faced, was, as we know, we woke up to the news yesterday morning that post offices did not have the necessary cash to pay out to grant beneficiaries. And there is a particular cohort of particularly elderly and vulnerable beneficiaries who rely solely on the post office as their means of getting their grant, and were not able to do so yesterday.
Absolutely. And if you've ever assisted an elderly person receive their grant money, you know how habitual their behavior is. I mean, in some instances, you quite literally need to be there with them every step of the way. And I don't think that's possible for all the elderly who are going to be affected by this.
Exactly. As we know, over the last few months, because of the technical glitches and the other challenges that Postbank and post offices have been going through, a lot of people have voted with their feet and have moved to alternative payment channels like the retailers and the ATMs. But those that are financially illiterate, technologically illiterate, cannot remember their PINs, are so connected to a government entity for getting their grant, are just not able to make that transition quickly enough and without support in order to move to these other channels. And those were the ones that unfortunately were affected yesterday and probably will most likely be in the queue today again, waiting to check whether that grant is available, because they literally do not know how to transition to other forms of payment channels currently.
Right. How do we support that cohort of beneficiaries?
I think this is where we have to walk the journey with the beneficiary. It's not good enough to say you have a choice of payment of method. You can move to a bank of your choice. You can go to an ATM or a retailer. For somebody who is 75, 80 years old, who's lived their whole life walking to a physical cash pay point and has had their money handed to them in cash, it is not an easy transition to just walk into a retailer, remember a PIN, which is a number they will only use once a month, in order to draw the full value of their grant. We've got to support them by either training them on how to do this, or making the access channels come to them in their own communities in a way that they are comfortable with, to be able to ensure that they are able to get their grants with as little cost as possible, with as little fear as possible, and the full cash value of the grant. Yeah,
and fear is a major thing. I think we take that for granted. A lot of these, especially elderly beneficiaries, are filled with anxiety when it comes to some of these things because, again, they're just so overwhelmed by the many changes along the way. Are we being too harsh on the state for just not getting this right? Or do we believe that by now, surely these kind of, small issues should not be a part of, the experience, quite frankly? This is a large payment system. Not many countries pay out grants at this scale. And I suppose in some ways, this is what comes with the package.
I think we have one of the largest social security packages in the world, as you rightly say. And I think government, bless them, have been trying to do their best. We know Postbank inherited a system that was already flawed when they took over the session of the payment of grants last year, October. And they themselves have been plagued with all of these technical issues just by trying to put a system in place to clean out what they had inherited. And SASSA, who is responsible for the mandate of the payment of grants, has also been trying to support. And even yesterday morning, SASSA KZN Comms was absolutely proactive in getting the message across that there were going to be issues. Please let stakeholders know what's going on, so that they don't sit in these queues, they don't wait, they're not resistant to having to move, etc. So I think slowly they are trying to put the measures in place, but I think there needs to be far more resources, capacitation and technical support given to these entities to ensure that a system like this and its integrity is maintained, and to ensure that the most vulnerable and the poorest of the poor in our country cannot on a monthly basis continue to face challenges like this, which impacts not just on that individual, but on the households within which they live, because that grant is not just for that individual, it supports an entire household.
Yeah, in fact, we've seen studies about how far this money typically goes. Even if it's a pension grant, it usually supports a number of people. It's a lot of money, also cumulative, Evashnee. How worried are you that criminality may seep in here? Because unfortunately, we just live in that kind of country where there's always someone waiting in the lurk to take advantage of of confused, vulnerable, even elderly people.
Exactly. And this is the fear factor. And this is why those beneficiaries that are holding on to the post offices for dear life are the most vulnerable, because they are scared to go to an ATM. They are scared to go to a retailer. They know they're being watched. They know people are aware that it is grant payday. And there's no security measures. So going to a post office makes them feel a bit more secure because they see the SAPS vehicle. They see a security guard. You know, it's a social environment because they know the people that are there, including the officials that are present. And so we've got to make sure that these changes as we move as a country to ensure that we are more digital, we are more advanced in the way we make payments, etc., works with these particular beneficiaries as well, and so that they feel secure in the environments that they transact in, to know that they will get their monies, that they're not going to be attacked, and that there's also not unscrupulous people that are going to be waiting to pounce on them, either through a digital method or through the physical cash method, in order to make sure that they get the monies that they are entitled to.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand there are about 21 banks that are essentially involved to try and alleviate the pressure here, and a number of retailers. But I wonder, Evashnee, if you reckon there's anything else the private sector can do to assist?
You know, as Black Sash, one of the things that we are very much in favor of is that the beneficiaries need to have a protected method in which to get their grants, so that third parties cannot get access to those grants, like we saw in the previous era, where there were unlawful, unauthorized deductions coming off people's grants where they did not commit to those transactions coming off their grants. So we would like the corporate sector to step up and work with government to create products that are either at low cost or no cost to these beneficiaries, to make sure that they're able to get their grants with as little as minimum fuss as possible, and also to make sure access to these communities is open, so that a beneficiary that's 70 years old doesn't have to wake up at 3 a.m. and travel to a town that's 40 kilometers away, stand in the queue at the risk of being mugged, having their money stolen, etc., etc. We want these beneficiaries to be protected, and we want their grants to be protected, and we think that this is where the private sector can come on board with government and ensure that these kinds of measures are put in place to support these beneficiaries.
Loud and clear. Evashnee Naidu, thanks very much indeed for your reaction. Do appreciate your time on the AM report this morning. Evashnee is with the Black Sash in KZN.